The presidents of the world's two most powerful countries are face to face once again. After 6 months, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping have met again in Beijing. But in those 6 months, something changed that few people expected to happen this quickly. The balance of power in the world has started shifting in ways that were once unthinkable. On one side is Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, still leading the world's largest economy and most powerful military. A man who arrived in China surrounded by America's biggest business leaders and billionaires. CEOs like Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, whose company today is worth trillions of dollars, more than the entire stock market of many countries combined. Pause. On the other side is Xi Jinping, the leader of China, and the most powerful communist leader in the world today, and the irony is impossible to ignore. The same capitalist giants who once saw China only as a factory are now standing in line before Xi Jinping asking for deals, access, and cooperation. The body language at the summit said a lot. Trump looked like a man trying to negotiate from necessity, while Xi looked calm, patient, and confident. China understands Trump well. They know he likes grand gestures, praise, and spectacle. So Beijing gave him the optics he enjoys. But behind the smiles and handshakes, China knows exactly why America came. Because today, the leverage is no longer one-sided. China is now competing with the United States in almost every major area: technology, manufacturing, military power, trade, and global influence. In some sectors, America is still ahead, but China no longer approaches negotiations from weakness. It sits at the table believing time is on its side. For years, many people dismissed China as a country that copied Western technology. But that image is now outdated. Today, China files more patents than any country in the world. More than 5 million valid invention patents already exist in China, many of them linked to strategic industries like artificial intelligence, robotics, clean energy, and advanced manufacturing. In AI alone, China accounts for a massive share of global patents. While much of the world is still talking about AI's future, Chinese companies are already building the infrastructure around it. The country now has thousands of AI firms and hundreds of millions of AI users. The scale is enormous. And then came moments that shocked the tech world. Chinese startups started releasing AI models that rivaled American systems despite facing restrictions on advanced chips. That forced the world to confront something uncomfortable. China is no longer just catching up in technology. In some areas, it may already be leading. The same thing is happening in robotics. Chinese companies are rapidly advancing humanoid robots and industrial automation. In quantum computing, satellite communication, and renewable energy, China is moving at incredible speed. Even in reusable rocket technology, an area once dominated by SpaceX, China is pushing aggressively forward. Semiconductors remain one of the few areas where America still holds a major advantage. NVIDIA, TSMC, and the broader US-led chip ecosystem are still ahead. That's one reason Trump brought tech CEOs with him. America understands how important the Chinese market remains for companies like NVIDIA. But China is investing enormous amounts into research and development every year. The fear in Washington is simple. If China eventually becomes self-sufficient in advanced chips, one of America's last major pressure points disappears. And then there's military power. For years, China quietly modernized its military while avoiding too much attention. Now it has started openly showcasing its capabilities to the world. Massive military parades revealed hypersonic missiles, stealth drones, unmanned submarines, and advanced fighter programs. Reports suggest China is already testing sixth-generation fighter aircraft, technology even the United States is still developing. The message was clear. China wants the world to see that it is no longer a regional power. It wants recognition as a global military force capable of challenging America directly. At the same time, recent conflicts around the world have exposed how expensive and difficult prolonged military dominance really is. Modern wars consume enormous stockpiles of missiles, interceptors, and advanced weapons systems. And many of the materials needed to rebuild those systems rely heavily on Chinese supply chains. That dependency is one of China's greatest strategic strengths. Manufacturing is where China's dominance becomes almost overwhelming. Today, China accounts for roughly 30% of global manufacturing output. No other country comes close. In fact, combining several of the next largest manufacturing economies still does not equal China's scale. China manufactures everything: electronics, steel, medicines, batteries, solar panels, vehicles, machinery, consumer goods. Entire global industries depend on Chinese factories. Even companies that publicly talk about diversification still rely heavily on China behind the scenes. Apple may be increasing production in India, but much of its supply chain still runs through China. Tesla's Shanghai factory remains one of its most important production hubs. Thoughtful. Global brands depend on Chinese infrastructure because no other country currently matches its speed, efficiency, and scale. Then there are rare earth minerals, one of the most important strategic resources in the modern world. These materials are critical for fighter jets, missiles, batteries, smartphones, and advanced electronics. China controls the overwhelming majority of rare earth processing, and Beijing understands exactly how powerful that position is. When trade tensions escalated, China didn't respond with dramatic speeches. Instead, it quietly restricted rare earth exports. The impact was immediate. Industries around the world realized how dependent they were. That's why American leaders continue coming back to the negotiating table. Not because they want to, but because modern economies cannot function smoothly without Chinese cooperation. Economically, America still remains number one in nominal GDP. The U.S. economy is larger, Americans are wealthier on average, and the dollar remains the world's dominant currency. America still has unmatched financial influence and a global alliance system China cannot yet replicate. But China's growth continues at a faster pace. In purchasing power terms, many economists argue China has already surpassed the United States. It produces more goods, builds more infrastructure, and dominates global trade in ways that are difficult to ignore. China's trade surplus has become massive because the entire world buys Chinese products. At the same time, Beijing has spent years expanding its global influence through infrastructure projects, investments, mining deals, and partnerships across Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. While China was building relationships patiently, America often appeared increasingly divided and unpredictable. Traditional allies started questioning Washington's reliability. And every time tensions emerged between the U.S. and its partners, China saw an opportunity. That does not mean China has already replaced America as the world's sole superpower. Not yet. The United States still possesses enormous strengths. Its military alliances stretch across the globe. Its navy remains dominant. The dollar still underpins the global financial system. American universities, innovation ecosystems, and semiconductor leadership remain extremely powerful advantages. And there are still major weaknesses inside China. Youth unemployment remains a serious concern. Per capita income is far below American levels. China also faces demographic challenges and slower population growth. But what makes this moment significant is not that China has already overtaken America. It's that for the first time in decades, many people can realistically imagine it happening. 40 years ago, China was still considered a poor developing country. Today, it leads the world in manufacturing, dominates renewable energy supply chains, files enormous numbers of patents, and competes directly with America in advanced technology and military modernization. And that changes the psychology of global power. Countries around the world are starting to recognize that the future may no longer revolve around a single superpower. The world is moving towards something more contested, more uncertain, and more multipolar. That is why this summit mattered so much. Because behind the smiles, photo ops, and diplomatic language was a much bigger question. Is America still the undisputed center of global power? Or are we witnessing the rise of a new superpower that believes its moment has finally arrived?